So why go sailing in 30 knots? Well, because it's exhilarating, and it's educational, and it reminds us that we sail on two entirely different boats. One boat up to about 18 or 20 knots when we put in our reefs, and a second boat when the wind pipes up and the spray starts to fly. It's different for every boat. Here are two. One flying along with a bone in her teeth and a full main, and the other in trouble. Trouble that's going to get worse, and trouble that we need to avoid. I think the best thing about going out on a blustery day is that we chose that day ourselves and our crew, and our head is screwed on straight. We know what we're looking for. We're looking for parts of the boat, that second boat, that'll slip or break or most of all foul. And all the lines and gears and fittings that we take for granted that just lie there when it's blowing 10 knots. And we'll get to know them better, and maybe they'll get to know us better too, and tell us, you can't do it that way when the wind is blowing hard. I put Spectra Lazy Jacks on this boat. They're a big help, and they foul. Whenever we're going out in heavier, of course, we want to tighten the outhaul as much as we can because a reefed sail should be flat. It's easy to forget. I'm trying reef tack downhaul lines on this boat, but they have to go through blocks, they have to go through the deck organizer, and all of that is subject to fouling. Fouling, fouling, and fouling is what we're going to be looking out for. Fouling and slipping. On our second boat, the one we're sailing today, every winch will take on a new personality. Where two turns works fine around the buoys, in heavy air you may need, as I do, to put on 4 or 5 or the maximum numbers of turns to be able to tail the winch, to be able to make the self-tailing feature work. Most of this stuff never gets tested in the normal course of everyday sailing. That's why we're going out today. Any clutch older than 1 year is subject to slipping, and they have their own techniques. Let's keep our eye on those because anytime a line gets loose in 30 knots, it makes a lot of noise. It's a great distraction. It can tangle itself into knots in seconds. There needs to be a winch handle, pocket, near every winch. So here, in the safety of our slip, we've now gone from a full mainsail to a first reef. We've put in our second reef, and we could even put in a third reef if we wanted to, which on my boat is the size of a storm trysail. The roller furling jib is one of the handiest ways to reduce sail on board, and I use this simple cleat most of the time round the buoys. But today it needs to be cleated down because with a partially furled jib, that line should come loose and the jib were to stream, it would be a disaster in 30 or 40 knots. In fact, I'm short a cleat. I'm going to have to put a new cleat on my combing about there, I think, to be able to secure the end of the roller furler. We're down today to about 50% of J. That's the measurement from the mast to the forestay. That ought to be all right. But here's many of the fouls that occur. It's really important to make sure that the jib fair lead is secure. They're adjustable. If they get loose today, it'll really foul things up, and it's almost impossible to simulate the violence of jib sheets, even when simply tacking. But especially if something else were to go wrong, they can find things to foul on that we can hardly imagine. And the answer is to just keep some tension on them all the time. Don't let anything get too slack. Every winch on my boat has a different personality in 30 knots. Some of them slip. They all need different numbers of turns. And one thing I must never forget to do is take the winch handle out after using it, because if you don't, you can't reduce or increase the numbers of turns. I sail single-handed most of the time, so I'm always clipped in. My 6-foot tether, clipped to an eye bolt in the cockpit, gives me access to everything there, and to go forward, it's a double turn of the tether around the long jackline. Safety harnesses can foul too. Going out in heavy air gives me one more chance to practice my moves, my turns, my observations. And to wear the right shoes. You know, I have 5 pairs of topsiders. 4 of them are death traps. We have to test our shoes to make sure they don't try to kill us when the going gets rough. This is Santa Monica Bay, 5 miles from where we're going to go sailing the very next day, still blowing 30 or so, gusting to 35. I think this boat is a Merit 24. I think their crew were experienced. They seem to have been equipped with the right gear, but something, as we can see, has gone wrong. And I think in one way or another, it has to do with fouls or breakage or slippage. There's something wrong with the way the jib is setting. These boats are very nimble. In fact, the Merit 24 sailed several times to Hawaii and back single-handed. But the jib won't set. You can see a man on the foredeck holding it, it seems. Perhaps the other jib sheet is fouled. Something is preventing it from setting. And when the sail can't set, even a fast little boat can't move forward. And what they can see that we couldn't was the Redondo Beach Pier. I would say this is a desperate moment of trying to get a fouled sail to set. The boat should be able to sail and tack and escape. It didn't. It's hard to watch. The boat was lost, but it's just a boat. All 4 crew got safely ashore, and I think one of them was treated for minor injuries. You can always get a new boat. Most of the time, an afternoon sail in 30 knots is a walk in the park. You almost always break something, and you always learn something, and you're always grateful that whatever you broke or learned happened that day and not some other day. In these conditions, even a 38-foot boat can be sailed like a dinghy. It really feels good to get to know that second boat, the high wind boat. And you know, when you play a sport, you usually train for it. Even if you're in the school play, they expect you to rehearse your lines. So when it comes to sailing, don't we need to practice? I do.